Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great stream with a great guest that I think you're really going to enjoy. Before we get started, I want to remind you that one of the ways we keep the lights on around here is, of course, subscriptions to Blaze TV. So if you want to support what we're doing and get access to all your favorite Blaze TV hosts while also seeing all the behind the scenes content, you need to head to blazetv.com/Auron to get $20 off your subscription today. That's blazetv.com/Auron. All right, guys, I was just talking with my co host today about why it would be great to just have one slow news day. But unfortunately, we have to inform you that it has been 0 days since a leftist terrorist attack. This time it was on an ICE facility in Dallas, Texas. We are getting reports that it was a shooter firing off of a roof. It appears to be trying to fire into a blacked out van, ended up shooting in and wounding several people, including killing one of the detainees. It would seem that no ICE agents themselves were actually hit in the process of this, and the shooter ended up shooting himself at the end of this terrorist attack. This, of course, comes after Jimmy Kimmel returned to television yesterday and did not apologize, refused to apologize for what he said about Charlie Kirk, covered up the motives of the people who assassinated him, running cover for people like our new shooter today on the ICE facility. We've also seen multiple other leftists trying to spread misinformation about the shooter in the hopes of distorting the worldview of those who are consuming their content. A huge problem, as the left increasingly believes a just completely distorted narrative about reality and what is going on around them. But joining me to discuss this today is Jay Burden. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, Auron, thank you so much for having me on. Obviously, this is horrible. Thankfully, no agents were hurt, but it is incredibly disturbing to see the trends that you and I have analyzed and, to be honest, pointed to for years at this point, of increasing radicalism from the left, of an increasing level of comfort with using violence to achieve political ends. Well, sadly, that has borne fruit. Sadly, the sort of years of Radio Rwanda style dehumanization of their political opponents has produced a predictable result, which is insane leftist terrorist violence. And this is not something that we need to or ought to countenance. Thankfully, it seems as if this man is not in a position to continue his actions. Obviously, we don't 100% know who did it or why, but we can guess based off of what information we do have. But as we've seen, as you said earlier, this is not simply one or two strange one-offs. This is an emergent pattern of deadly leftist violence, and unless it's addressed, it will continue. It is the logical conclusion of the arguments we've heard coming from that side of politics for well over a decade now. Sorry to say.
I think all of that's correct. And of course, we're going to need to dive deeper into the evidence here, the leftist reaction, how Jimmy Kimmel plays into all this, even story about YouTube finally admitting all the censorship it was doing under the compulsion of the Biden administration. But before we get to all of these items, let's hear from today's sponsor. You know, we spend a lot of time here talking about what's going on in culture and politics, the battles, the noise, the craziness. But here's something different. If you're a woman listening right now, or if there's a woman in your life that you care about, you need to hear this. It's called Share the Arrows, and it's happening on October 11th in Dallas, Texas. It's hosted by Blaze TV's own Allie Beth Stuckey, and it's designed to encourage, equip, and speak truth into the lives of women who are trying to stand firm in this world. This is a day full of worship, teaching, and real conversations. So if you're a woman who's been craving encouragement in biblical truth, this is for you. And if you're a husband or a dad or a brother listening, think about your wife, daughter, or sister who needs this. In a culture that's constantly pulling in the wrong direction, this is a chance to stop, reset, and get grounded in biblical truth. Tickets and details are at sharethearrows.com. And yes, VIP options are still available. That's sharethearrows.com. All right, guys, let's just read the news from Director Kash Patel here. His statement, he says, this morning, just before 7 a.m. local time, an individual fired multiple rounds at a Dallas, Texas ICE facility, killing one and wounding several others before taking his own life. FBI, DHS, ATF are on the ground with Dallas PD and state authorities. While the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. See the photo below. And if you go there, you can see what seems to be some kind of stripper clip. One of the bullets has anti-ice written on it. One of the unspent shell casings recovered has an engraving with the phrase anti-ice. More updates are coming. These despicable, political motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. We are only miles from Pearyland, Texas, where just 2 months ago, an individual ambushed a separate ICE facility targeting their officers. It has to end, and the FBI and our partners will lead these investigation efforts to see it that those who target our law enforcement officers are pursued and brought to the fullest extent of justice. So, again, no actual ICE agents killed, but mainly it seems due to the incompetence of the shooter firing into a van. He couldn't identify the actual people inside, so he didn't know which of the people inside he was actually hitting. Perhaps he just thought it was full of ICE agents coming back from a raid or something, didn't know who would be in there, but he managed to only hit detainees. And while some of them may have been hardened criminals, we just don't know. Obviously, they did not deserve random bullets from a guy who was trying to murder people. So while we're glad that obviously the officers are safe, still horrific loss of life and wounding done by a radical leftist terrorist. And as Kash Patel says here, most people probably don't know what's been going on with ICE. And we'll get into this more in a second, but the left has built a very impressive apparatus to limit the amount of information that people in their audience receive. This isn't just your echo chamber that we talked about, 10 years ago when people were complaining about college campus feuds. This is a full-on lockdown of all information, misinformation campaigns starting from the very beginning of every major event, trying to distort what's going on. That's why Jimmy Kimmel was so important, because he lied about Charlie Kirk's killer. He didn't get any real punishment for it. He got away with it. He's back on the air, and leftists are taking a piece out of his playbook. I don't think even many right-wingers knew ultimately the amount of violence that was being leveled at ICE officers, why people like Gavin Newsom pushing for the removal of ICE officers' masks is actually a direct threat to their lives. They just didn't grasp the degree of violence that was already being aimed at ICE officers. And now we see a full-on attack on these people, including a fatality and multiple woundings.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring up. This is the logical conclusion of the last 15 years of increasing violence, both in action and in political rhetoric. Obviously, we're not quite at the high water mark of left-wing violence that was the late 60s, where there were dozens of bombings every day across the country. But still, in the the last 10 years, if we look at that trend line, it's headed in a worrying direction. Obviously, throughout the entire first Trump presidency, the summer of love, and now the second, there has been a baseline level of leftist violence. This should not be the case. It simply is. But what we've seen is the incredibly histrionic reaction to Trump's basic border sensibilities, which is saying that illegal immigration is in fact illegal, has been to turn that up to 11. To say again that this is, as Rashida Tlaib said, this is a fascist coup. And we know that fascism, that Nazis are the ultimate evil. And well, the logic, the conclusion of going from first we punch a Nazi, as we learned in 2016, to, well, if they're taking over the country, surely shooting them is justified. That's not a huge leap to make. And we're seeing that there are many people across the political left who are picking up on those signals. Because as much of a tragedy as any one killing is, these are not random scattered events. They're politically motivated terrorist activity. I'm not saying that there's some wide web connecting all these activists together, but they are picking up on the same signal from left-wing cultural elites, people like Kimmel, who for years have produced a sort of Radio Rwanda stream of insane libel, of slander about their political opponents, painting them as unredeemably evil and worthy of punishment. And you've seen this even in the reaction to the tragic slaying of Charlie Kirk. While certainly, the biggest, the most popular figures, at least in some sense, condemned it, the reaction from many progressives on the ground has been to sort of justify it. Say, well, he was a bad guy. or he was making people angry, effectively providing moral cover for this type of action. And so clearly, if you have a motivation, a moral justification, there are some people, maybe on the fringes, who are going to take you up on that deal. And unless those incentives are corrected, unless the punishment is severe, this will continue. I don't say that because I'm happy that it will continue. I am simply looking at the state of politics as it is and making a very reasonable projection. And these are things Aaron, you and I were saying in the 2 weeks preceding after the slaying of Charlie Kirk, that this is likely to continue. And it looks like we didn't even have to wait a month to be proven correct. But I'll throw it back to you.
No, it's exactly what both of us foresaw. I think anyone who isn't completely, ideologically possessed by some desperate need to stay within whatever norms they think have been preached to them by the system can see pretty quickly where this was going. Obviously, we had leftists spinning out of control. As you said, a few of them had the self-discipline, even for a day or two, to denounce the shooting. But pretty much at this point, all of them have come back and said, well, actually, maybe Charlie Kirk was a fascist. Maybe he really was a terrible person. Maybe he really did, deserve this. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. But, we get why you might do it. If someone could just, rid me of this meddlesome priest, it very much that mentality on the left over and over. And as soon as I saw guys like the Kranzensteins coming out and pledging their allegiance to Antifa, I knew where this is going. I know that this was going to spiral out of control. I even made a video saying, look, guys, we're on the other side of the Rubicon. Okay, there's a time where people would have known at the very least to just keep their mouths shut, right? Like, just keep your mouth shut. We lost this news cycle. Dave the Distributist was talking about this on his stream recently. We lost the news cycle. Just sit this one out. We'll come back a couple weeks after. Basically what they did with when Trump was shot, right? They knew there was just you had a few guys like the Tenacious D guys who just couldn't keep their mouths shut. But for the most part, like, they knew that, okay, there's just nothing, even if we're total cynical political actors, the best move in that Machiavellian sense is to just keep our mouth shut. There's no winning this news cycle. So just wait for the news to wash over people. And then we'll go back to yelling and calling everyone a fascist in a few weeks, which is exactly what they did. But this time they didn't even tap the brakes. And you can see this, here's Kranzenstein says, who writes anti-ICE on a bullet just before shooting 3 immigrants being detained by ICE? Suddenly, those who never trust the FBI are suddenly convinced by this. So again, we're just immediately introducing conspiracy theories into it. No, there's no way that anyone would write their motives on a bullet, except, of course, the guy who shot Charlie Kirk, the person who just shot up an entire school worth of Catholic children at mass. Actually, writing your messages on your magazines and your rifle and your bullet are a big part of this, like, trans Antifa shooter culture. Now, we don't know if this guy was a troon or a troon chaser, but I bet you, I bet you it's going to be one of the two. Either way, we don't know for sure. We don't know if he was officially affiliated with Antifa, but the pattern of how these shootings work, how they, kind of write their mission onto their bullets, has been seen over and over again. So Kranzenstein is just lying directly to his audience in hopes that they will believe the narrative that this is in no way a leftist. We see the same thing here with Aaron Rupar, who usually spends all his time just posting Trump's best clips and pretending like they were bad, but today says, this is the fishiest shit I have seen. They're supposed to believe that the shooter wrote anti-ICE in pin on a bullet and then shot the detainees, but not an ICE officer. Again, ignoring the fact that this is a pattern of display, a pattern of a kind of a ritual before you commit one of these shootings to etch your ideology onto the weapon or onto the shells. Like, we haven't seen this multiple times from leftist terrorists. Also, yes, it turned out that only the detainees ended up getting hit. However, again, I believe they were shooting into a blacked out van, so he did not know who he was shooting. And also, surprise, surprise, idiot leftist, not the best shot, not the best at, identifying the target he's trying to hit. Kind of probably why he blew himself away at the end, I'd imagine. He shot a couple of immigrants, realized he didn't get any ICE agents, and then decided maybe the best way out of this was immediate. So yeah, not exactly some amazing conspiracy theory. And guys, by the way, I know a lot of people have been spinning conspiracy theories with Charlie Kirk and his assassination, and they got angry because I pushed back against them. But this is why it's a problem. This is why it's a problem, because you're aiding the left in this. You're letting the left off the hook. Oh, it was Israel. Look, you don't have to like Israel. You can even believe that Israel would shoot a foreign official. That's not exactly a crazy belief. But believing they shot Charlie Kirk and putting the onus on them helps to feed into guys like Aaron Rupar going out there and saying, "Oh no, it's all a conspiracy. Every one of these shootings, we don't know anything. Everything's in question. Every bullet is a magic bullet. Every shot is an impossible shot." This culture of going in and immediately trying to spin the obvious motives here is only aiding in the left's ability to push this Jimmy Kimmel strategy, this strategy of running forward, lying to their own audiences, distorting reality before any real reporting can get on the ground. And by the time any real facts are known, all the leftists assume they already know everything they need to know about the crime. They move on. They never hear the actual truth.
Well, and that's very much the advantage of power, right? When we talk about being in charge, when we talk about the deep state, that sort of institutional control lets them escape the consequences of their actions. When we talk about Jimmy Kimmel, it's important to compare and contrast what happened there to what happened to Alex Jones. Look, I think Alex Jones is really funny. I don't actually listen to him really on anything at all. But it's important to say that he, judging by the kind of, most reasonable take, made the same mistake, if we can characterize it as a mistake, that Jimmy Kimmel did, saying something incorrect about a tragedy. Well, okay, sure, Kimmel does get canceled. He's back, I should say, which is different. But let's say he gets canceled.
And very importantly, sorry to interrupt, but very importantly, he's back after several terrorist threats and a full-on terrorist attack on ABC affiliates. So yes, maybe ultimately his buddies in Hollywood put a lot of pressure on what was going on. But to be clear, the Sinclair Broadcasting Group was planning to air a tribute to Charlie Kirk in his place, in the place of Jimmy Kimmel. And in response, they received several bomb threats. And one of their affiliates, I believe in California, Sacramento, actually got a hail of gunfire through the window. Luckily, no one was killed. But to be clear, one of the very direct reasons Jimmy Kimmel's back on the air is because leftists committed more terrorism in response to him receiving any kind of consequence for lying about Charlie Kirk.
Well, definitely. And that's what I mean to say when you are in the favor of power, you don't have to pay consequences. You don't have to accept the consequences of the wrong things you've done. Yeah, sure, it's embarrassing for Kimmel. He doesn't get quite as much as he would. But look at Jones. Jones owes what, $750 million, right? Some preposterous amount. Absurd. He's ruined for life, financially ruined. And similarly, when we look at this sort of stochastic terrorism, right, calling for violence, Auron, you and I understand how careful right-wingers have to be, really about anything when we're on platforms like YouTube or social media. We have to use creative euphemisms. We have to talk around things. We have to be very cautious discussing anything that has to do with physical violence. But for those aligned to power, for those who are on the political left, they can say basically whatever they want. They can encourage violence obliquely or, in many cases, directly. And even when those calls are acted upon, even when there are a spate of terrorist attacks, well, who actually gets punished for it? One guy, kind of, right? And even then, somewhat reluctantly. You compare to someone like, Mackie, right, who spent effectively the best part of a decade in and out of court over a joke that, I might add, Kimmel and many other leftists have made. It's sort of an old saw, right? A joke that your grandparents would make about, oh, I hope the Democrats come out to vote on November 3rd, haha, kind of poke someone in the ribs. But if you're an enemy of power, they're going to use that to ruin you. Alternatively, if you're a friend, you can basically do whatever you want. And so, the old line that Stalin may or may not have said, for my friends, anything, for my enemies, the law. That's what we see here. Even when the sins, so to speak, of each group are as far apart as they can be, right? Bodies being stacked up on one side and being minorly rude on the internet on the other.
Yeah, that one was a South American dictator. I'm trying to remember which country. Maybe El Salvador. Anyway, not the current one. But yeah, ultimately, we can see, you sent me this one, that things are only getting worse out there. We have people openly posting recruitment posters for violent terrorist organizations that talk about celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, and posting the very phrase that was etched into the bullet. So, the impossible thing that can't ever happen, that none of these leftists have ever seen before, except, 2 weeks ago, the same message. So they're openly recruiting terrorists, on college campuses without fear, because the Trump administration isn't doing anything. Very, very simple. Very simple. Trump administration is not taking action, and so they're continuing to do this. Here is yesterday, I believe, we had Eugene, Oregon, where there was a large number of Antifa surrounding a federal building. They trapped ICE agents inside for a number of hours. They needed to find alternative routes until federal law enforcement finally showed up. So, it was only a few hours of complete embarrassment by an open terror organization to the Trump administration before they finally decided to do something about that. So, what we're seeing here is that the Trump administration's complete inability to take action in this moment is causing serious violence inside the United States. Now, I get it. You were waiting maybe for Charlie Kirk's funeral. You were waiting to build cases against these people. You want to do it right. Okay. But it's been several weeks and we're still seeing no high-profile arrests. You can't find one guy in Antifa who's committed a criminal conspiracy. I'm very doubtful of this. I'm extremely doubtful of this. So what is happening here? Like, I'm sorry. I'm angry at the left. I'm going to blame the left a lot today, but I want to be very clear. I am furious at the right. I'm sorry. Like, I'm trying to give the Trump administration the benefit of the doubt. But how many dead bodies does it take? How many dead children does it take? How many dead fathers does it take? How many attempts to murder ICE agents does it take? How many dead Christians does it take? When are we going to care? When are we going to care enough to stop this? Oh, they're going to call us fascists. They're literally shooting you while calling you fascists for debating them. Who cares? Who cares? I don't care if they call us mean names. I want them to stop shooting people. We all know how to stop it. This isn't a mystery. This isn't some conundrum. This isn't some difficult logistical issue we got to work out. It's not. And I'm really, really, unfortunately, looking at guys like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, especially Pam Bondi, who can't seem to get anything together. We don't seem to be getting anywhere. No arrests, no RICO cases, no raids, nothing. At most, we might be able to arrest a few people who are literally obstructing ICE agents from leaving a building in an attempt to intimidate them. That's about all we can do. Otherwise, can't be bothered, it seems.
Well, especially when we have recent history to show what the intelligence agencies in the U.S. can do to our own citizens. You may remember when the Biden administration was sending no-knock raids to deal with octogenarians, right, who may have been too close to an electoral justice protest that happened somewhere. Again, this is clearly doable. The tools exist. This is the most powerful government security apparatus the world has ever seen. I don't believe you when you say, oh, it's too hard, we can't figure it out. Either you're incompetent, you're lazy, or you just don't want to do it. It's sort of up to them which excuse they want to pull. Although I don't know if those really help them out. But clearly, again, this is a problem of will. It can be done. We've seen these same tools turned on us and our friends time and time again. They exist. If we can go after MAGA grandmas, why can't we go after the people who are very clearly posting their intentions? We know the platforms. Discord, for example, where many of these organizations plot. Well, Auron, if you and I decided to start a Discord and we started saying things, we'd be kicked off almost immediately. This has happened to many people on the right. Not only that, you run the risk of having your personal information exposed, as has happened many, many times. So clearly, These mechanisms exist, these tools exist. Why are they not being used? Is it simply that every institution and tech and the entire judicial system has been taken over by libertarians and classical liberals who don't want to impugn on the rights of others? That may have happened. I'm not convinced by it. But again, when we look at the administration, I think myself and many others were happy to give them the benefit of the doubt. Happy to say, okay, I'll give you guys some time to figure it out. Once, twice, maybe. But now, you've been in charge. You control everything. Okay, so if you can't do it, why? Are you really in charge? Because if you can't stop this, if you no longer have the monopoly on violence, are you really sovereign? Are you really the leader? If that's the case. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that tomorrow we wake up and all of these guys are being led away in chains. But at least judging off the information we have, I don't think I am wrong.
Sadly, I don't think you are. And as you say, it's not just the raids on the J6 grannies, right? It's also protesters at abortion clinics. It's guys like raids on guys like why can I suddenly not remember his name? Older gentleman has a tattoo of Richard Nixon. Was the super charismatic gray-haired guy who was always Roger
Bannon?
No.
Roger
Robert Stone. Yes,
Okay.
Stone. So they full armed, middle of the night. Thank you, Roger Stone. Yes. Full middle of the night raids on guys like Roger Stone who were not going to hurt anyone. But yeah, we were more than able to just, show up to their house, machine guns everywhere, swarm the whole place, kick through the door, windows, no problem. The Biden administration did this all day long, didn't hesitate, didn't bother them even the slightest. But we can't get one Antifa guy. We can't get one arrest. We can't get one Antifa leader. Just one. I get it. You're not going to get them all in one swoop. That's fine. You can't put one guy up for me just to be like, okay, we actually care. We're going to do something. There's more coming. It's really insane. And it's looking very bad. And I hope that yet another direct assault on federal law enforcement will make these guys actually get off their butts and do something, anything at all. It is insane at this point that they're continuing the way they are.
Even out of simple self-interest, right? Let's assume that these people are selfish Machiavellians. Clearly, right? Maybe you could say, well, they can't really be bothered to protect people like you and I, Auron. But at this point, there are shots being aimed at agents of the state, which is, again, clearly a thumbing your nose at power, saying, I can come at your guys. And look, all right, I get it. This guy isn't exactly around to, go to prison afterwards. He pursued Canadian healthcare, as the kids say. Nonetheless, this is a real problem. This is a challenge to your authority. And if you can't put an end to this, if you can't say, if you swing at us, you'll regret it, well, I'm sorry, you're not sovereign. You're not in charge. You're not the real government. Because whoever is in charge, and we've seen this in, let's be honest, literally any state ever, has that ability. And when we compare failed states to real ones, well, what is a feature of failed states? They don't have the monopoly on violence. They've lost the ability to say the only people who get to enact violence on others to enforce their will is me and my guys. It's a very basic requirement of being a country. And Auron, you and I live in the most powerful, prosperous nation on earth, allegedly. But if that is true, and yet our government with this, almost miraculous amount of power, these, incredible security apparatus cannot do it, either they don't care or they can't. And again, what's the answer there? I think the Trump administration needs to provide an answer to that question. Do they not care, or are they not sovereign? Because as far as I can tell, those are the only two options.
Yeah, again, agree 100%. And this is only going to spiral further out of control. The leftists are only going to be more emboldened as this wedge is continually driven by these actors. But speaking of, go to Jimmy Kimmel, who of course returned last night. He did his best to do a non-apology, to try to look very sad. He did lots of cryy face, which is something Jimmy Kimmel has done before. He's a little Jordan Peterson in that way. However, he managed to go through this whole thing with a large amount of righteous indignation. We'll just hear the non-apology here.
I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human. And that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
Of course it was. It's not even like you literally are. If you're cracking jokes about it immediately, like you can say, okay, I'm a comedian, it's what I do. But saying I didn't mean to make light of it, no, you literally worked it into a comedy monologue. That's exactly what you meant to do. No one can miss this from outer space.
Well, and it's especially embarrassing because I would almost respect him more if he was fully bought into the bit. He's like, yeah, you know what? I'm a comedian. I say horrible stuff. Deal with it. Like, if that was his position, all right, I wouldn't have said it, but I could at least get it. But being able to have your cake and eat it too, being able to say outrageous things, and then the moment that someone objects to it, the moment you might face consequences, to sort of run back to mom and say, oh, that's not what I meant to do. That's not what I meant to do. This is the exact mechanism I was speaking to earlier about when you are the friend of power, you don't have to play by the rules. You get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to pretend to be edgy when you want, and then retreat back. Use your Mott and Bailey to make sure that you can both be edgy and joke and also never be held account for what you've said. It's incredibly irritating. And the fake tears are unbecoming is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual.
So again, just a complete lie here, top to bottom. So he directly blamed a group. He made it very clear who he blamed. He said it was a MAGA Republican. He said it was one of their own. He knows exactly what he said, and yet there's no apology here. You notice he even said, I'm sorry for misleading you. I'm sorry for lying about that. I'm sorry for covering for terrorist attacks on this man's family. I'm sorry for making sure that his children and his widow heard me lie about and completely distort the facts so that their father's killer could get a free pass, at least in public opinion. He didn't say any of those things. He just said, you heard me wrong. I didn't intend to say that, except it's exactly what I said verbatim. So there's no apology here. This is just him stating, well, I'm going to cry a little bit while I explain why I said exactly what I said. Well, actually, no, I'm just going to lie about what I said entirely.
That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make. But I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on.
So again, just complete lie here, top to bottom. Oh, you misperceived me. I understand why you might come to this conclusion. I get how you could listen to my words and then come to the wrong understanding. Not a single word about what he actually said. Not a single word of asking for forgiveness, apologizing, showing any actual sadness over what he had done and how he had treated the Kirk family and how he had distorted the American reality. And the worst part about this is now that he is back on air, he has signaled to all the other leftists that this is now how we conduct ourselves. And you can see this from the Kranzensteins and the Rupars of the world. Of course, this has been a part of leftist operation for a long time, spinning things before they really get out into the world to change the perception. But Jimmy Kimmel is now in the position where we just full court press lie, not just in the news media, not just as reporters, comedians, entertainers, whatever it is. As soon as a cultural event goes out, as soon as there's any political violence, rush forward, give a false narrative, spin the understanding, and that will anchor into people's brains. And then when their Republican uncle shows them a clip of the actual facts of what's going on, they can just be like, yeah, whatever, bigot. I'm sure you got that on Fox News, right? Like that is now the standard operating procedure. Send every leftist soldier out to the front lines as quickly as possible to lie about these terrorist attacks so they can hope to spin it and completely distort the idea that leftists have in the United States.
Well, and again, when we talk about the ability of the left to have their cake and eat it too, you get the advantages of violence, right? You get to silence your political opponents and then dump the blame on the very people being targeted. It's an incredible bit of misdirection. You can understand why they would want to pull it off, but there's no reason to let them do that. There's no reason that they should be able to both advocate for violence and then blame the victims of that violence for the very occurrence. It's absurd. And I say this, I feel no sympathy for him in the slightest. He deserves everything he got for it. And I'm sad to say, as you mentioned earlier, that it appears as if terrorism works, that if you threaten broadcasters, if you shoot guns at their affiliate offices, well, you get what you want. And we also have to understand many times people on the right are told to worry about the precedent, right? If we set the precedent that you can be canceled for a joke, well, what will come of that? One, I would say in that case, that precedent was set quite a while ago. But also, if we roll over here, we have to worry about the precedent being set there as well. If we say you can react to something you don't like with threats of violence and get what you want, you do realize what you are incentivizing. You are incentivizing more political violence. And unfortunately, that is exactly what we've seen. So when the kind of well-meaning conservative asks you to, consider the precedent being set, understand that knife cuts both ways.
Yeah,
in any case, there is a action and a reaction. And even aside from the individual culpability of the people involved with this violence, which is there, it is their fault that it happened. You also have to understand that people react to incentives. And certainly some of the incentives are outside of our direct control. We can't, at least immediately, make the left stop lionizing these people. We can't immediately make them stop turning them into folk heroes. But what we can do is make sure that those people who do commit violence and those who aid and abet them are punished severely. Similarly, we can make sure that violence is not an effective bargaining tool, changing the landscape, changing the incentives. And sure, are there nutcases? Obviously, there are always nutcases. There are guys who read Catcher in the Rye and decide it's time to blast me, John Lennon. But that's a very different thing from what we're talking about, which is people, admittedly crazy people, reacting to language coming from left-wing cultural figures, reacting to, I wouldn't even say dog whistles, just outright calls for violence again and again and again.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you 100% on this, oh, what if the pendulum swings back stuff? I mean, obviously, it's been insane for a long time, right? Like we've watched, again, J6ers go to jail, abortion protesters go to jail, administration officials go to jail without committing any crimes. We've seen, obviously, the censorship across all kinds of different platforms. So the idea that like, oh, you can't bring the FCC into this, even though Jimmy Kimmel directly violated the broadcast agreement by lying on air, is just insane. It's like, oh, well, when you get back in power, what? All your conservative late night hosts will get canceled? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we even trying to say? Obviously, the left is already doing all of this. You can't avoid the consequences of the swing back because they're already happening. It can't, they are murdering people. It doesn't get worse than this. Like, it could be more intense of the same thing, but all of the consequences are here. And that really comes forward in our last story here, which is the understanding now that Google has admitted quite extensively, actually, to being openly pressured by the Biden administration to censor conservatives. Now, we all knew this, right? Like this is one of those. This is like, oh, it turns out it wasn't a bat flu from a wet market, or it turns out the vaccine doesn't actually work. Like we all knew this. But it was all the, oh, well, we can't say it out loud thing. Now we have the direct proof from Representative Jim Jordan. He says, due to oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube for political speech violations a return to the platform. But that's not all. YouTube also admits that the Biden administration censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong, confirms that the Biden administration wanted Americans censored for speech that did not violate YouTube's policies, details when YouTube began rolling back its censorship policies on political speech, states that the public debate should never come at the expense of relying on authorities, promises to never use third-party fact checkers, warns that European censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech. So we have an open admission from, I think, the largest video platform in the world, one that certainly every young person is completely addicted to and watches pretty much exclusively instead of television. And it admits that outright it has been banning and demonetizing and censoring entirely at the behest of the federal government, by the Biden administration. And this has to have resulted in one of the largest destructions of information available. Now, Jay Burden and I were talking about this beforehand. We tend to not like to do these stories because it feels a little bit like inside baseball. Like, obviously, we're two people who earn our living, at least in part, on YouTube. So it matters to us whether or not you can monetize videos on YouTube. But there is a larger principle here, not just us going, oh, woe is the influencer. What we're saying is that this information is being censored in real time. And by making sure that you demonetize or completely remove these people from the internet, you are ensuring that entire generations of people do not get this information, that they are completely cut off from the truth. They're completely cut off from what's going on. They have no idea about what's actually happening. And this is happening in real time under complete government compulsion. So when it's, oh, what if the FCC points out that you're violating the law? Oh, what if the Biden administration directly went to the video platform and said, take it off or else? And then they did. Like, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine there isn't a, $100, if not, $100 million class action lawsuit at minimum available to YouTube creators who lost their entire livelihood over the Biden administration directly ordering censorship and YouTube choosing to comply. To be clear, YouTube is not a victim here. They wanted to do this. That's why they did it. The Biden administration telling them to do it is just an excuse. They wanted to do this. That's why it happened. There are plenty of cases where the government tells different companies like Apple to do something and then just say, no, piss off. That's not what YouTube did here. They could have done that. They could have fought the battle. They didn't. They wanted to remove these creators. The Biden administration told them to. They gave them a nice reason to do so. And that's why we ended up here.
Yeah, so several things there. One, again, when we speak about incentives, this is creating a massive cultural incentive, which is if you are on the left wing, you can make quite a lot of money by making left-wing propaganda. Some of the biggest streamers in the world are lefty propaganda machines, and they are incredibly wealthy. Whereas if you were interested in right-wing ideas, one, it's an uphill battle, but two, you're not doing it for the money. Auron, you and I followed a similar path where when we started out, one, weren't making a lot of money at all. And two, it was incredibly dangerous. If we were found out, we'd lose our jobs, our real jobs at least. And so that's massively stacking the deck again, because like many people, I got more interested in right-wing politics because of things I found on social media, book reviews, streams, something like that. And while look, like there is a growing right-wing movement in America, that's certainly true, despite the censorship. But nonetheless, we have to understand that that is in spite of for things like this, in spite of the largest companies in the world attempting to use arbitrary power to check that. I mean, I think both of us can rattle off dozens of people who were kicked off the platform for basically no reason. Never broke any of the rules, never said something that all of us could look at and say, okay, well, you shouldn't have done that. And as you've said, YouTube is not a victim here because they still did this even before the Biden administration. They still did this when Trump was in power. They were happy to pull out something that said, oh, you've violated our terms and best practices. Goodbye. For, again, no reason given. And so to me, look, I hope Jim Jordan, I hope the other congressmen take a hammer to YouTube. I have no sympathy. Any punishment is not harsh enough as far as I'm concerned for this. But in all seriousness, we have to understand that They are presenting this in such a way as to foist responsibility on the Biden administration, an administration which certainly I have no love for, and certainly they did a lot of bad things. We have to understand, YouTube did a whole bunch of this on their own, well before Biden was even, on the political stage as a presidential candidate. So don't let them skate on this. Don't let them set the terms of what they've done, but also understand that this matters. And it's not just you and I complaining about our AdSense payments. It's that we've seen for the past 10 years, I mean, even going back to Obama, the incredible impact of social media on political discourse. And the right has punched massively above its weight on social media, despite overwhelming censorship. And so one has to wonder, where would we be if social media was a level playing field? Where would we be if people like you and I are and didn't have to, use euphemisms to talk around certain issues, to modulate what we say in public, because, the moderation team is, the worst combination of, Silicon Valley and New Delhi put together, right? This is clearly a threat to our democracy to use language that is regularly touted to punish people like you and I. And if we do, again, live in a democracy, how can this be allowed, right? How can power put their thumb on the scale? Well, we all know, right? We all know that's not how it works. But nonetheless, Google has admitted it. Let them pay the consequences of that, right? They have admitted they did something wrong. And so I don't know how much we've already seen with Alex Jones, right? When you make an enemy of people in power, you can be forced to pay truly outrageous sums of money. So why not? Let's let Google empty their pockets a little bit.
Yeah, again, I am unfortunately believe that Republicans will extract no real price out of these guys other than forcing them to allow people back on the platform. I've already seen some people like Dave Cullen, Computing Forever, who've been banned for 10 years for basically nothing. Like, really, we're in no way radical, no way controversial, outside of kind of just the banal, standards of 10 years ago, is finally back on the platform. So I'm glad for them. I'm glad that, he's returned. It'll be interesting to see if they put, guys like Nick Fuentes back on, if they're doing this, if they're trying to remove it, or if it'll be a very careful rollback of very specific creators. But ultimately, like I said, I think it has to be a class action lawsuit if you want to get anything out of these guys. There has to be legal action by creators who lost, in many cases, thousands, tens of thousands, of hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe over the course of several years, millions of dollars because of what YouTube had done. And so I think that's the only way they'll pay any kind of price. But again, the ultimate point of this, in kind of the context of all of our other stories today, is don't tell me what if the left comes back and censors us. What if the left uses power to silence our voices? We got to be careful. We can't set the precedent, because if we do, they might do all the stuff we know they did and can prove and just came out in additional congressional testings or hearings.
Well, and this is something that mutual friend of ours, Dave, the distributist, was talking about. That from the perspective of the regime, the left-wing, right-wing establishment, the way that things are supposed to work is that when the left is in power, they get to use power. They get to cancel their opponents. They get to financially ruin people they don't like. And the right gets to set things to a level playing field. So it creates this ratchet where when I'm in charge, I get to hit you. And when you're in charge, we have to be perfectly respectful and keep our hands to ourselves. And over time, again, talking about trend lines, we know which ways that goes. And again, I have no sympathy for someone who says, well, how dare you do this? Acting as if conservatives, right-wingers, have invented these strategies. Acting as if we don't remember what it was like when, firefighters would lose their job for donating $5 to Kyle Rittenhouse, who I might add was acquitted. He was not guilty of murder. But to say that this is some sort of new innovation, that this is, America turning dark, is absurd. And much as we've seen with Kimmel, these are crocodile tears. This is a cynical reaction designed to provoke a change, designed to get us to stop doing something that's actually working. And again, remind people again and again and again, don't listen to their fake tears because they're cynical, because they're using that to get you to let up. So when they're in charge, they can hit you back twice as hard. It's so clear that this is not an argument in good faith. And we've seen that because, well, they don't feel particularly upset about using violence. And if that's on the table, I'm sorry. If you're killing ours, you losing a job, you being forced to pay out for breaking the law, I don't even know if that's quite fair, right?
No.
That seems to me to be a very gracious response, all things considered.
Yeah, it's not enough, but at least it's something. And at this point, that's far more than we've been getting. All right, well, we're going to head to the questions of the people are stacking up quite a bit. Before we do, Mr. Burden, can you please tell people where to find your excellent work?
Yeah, sure. So my primary output is The Jay Burden Show. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Again, Auron, thank you so much for having me on.
All right, let's go to Thimplar. He says, Fum, don't have enough Latin for that. While Rome debates, Seguenta is captured. Speeches don't stop civil war. Yeah, again, I think we all understand that action is what is required here. I do think that we can get everything done that we need to get done under the color of law. But if it doesn't get done under the color of law, it will get done somewhere else. So I'm really hoping that the Trump administration understands where it's at right now. It should have understood it a long time ago. Maybe they've just been lining up the most thorough case we've ever seen in human history. Cool, but let's go. Now's the time. Enough of the hand wringing, enough of the vague, we'll come after Antifa at some point. Like, now is the time. That's enough. Simpler also says Pam is a disaster. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've made an entire rant about that, so I won't go into any more detail other than say, put Gates back in, get I don't know, DeSantis, somebody, just anyone else really. Leonard says, AA said it best today, all the quasi-right-wing populist leaders across the West are simply compromised. Until you fix that, you accomplish nothing. That's, of course, true. But the question is, how do you fix that, right? I'm with you, right? But for academic agent who, I'm friends with, but I feel had some erratic commentary as of late. It's impossible to shoot anyone with a 30-06 from like 200 yards away. He thought that was like magical. And so it's like, okay, I hear you. Yes, they're compromised. So what do you do? Right. My hope is to encourage those in power to properly serve the people that they are supposed to, recognizing that it is in their own interests. I understand they're compromised, but you try to create a wedge and say, okay, if you do not enact these things, we will know who you are and what you are done. Now, maybe they will still fail. It seems like they might. I'm not saying they won't, but like practically, what does any of that mean? Right. And I think the answer is you have to put pressure on people in the Trump administration, other public officials, other private entities like corporations, and see if you can't move the needle. Not because I'm this big fan of the power of the people, but literally, what else are you going to do?
Right. It's like we have a limited number of levers to pull. And
Right.
if the conclusion is there's simply nothing to be done, just wait for the next cycle, like we're waiting for, a new age. It's like, okay, I mean, conceptually you may be right, but that's a very horrible way to live, right? Just wait for something else to be done. It's sort of bizarrely like feminine in a cosmic sense, right? To simply wait to be acted upon by history. And
A lot of lunar energy there. Yeah.
yes, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Look, I am obviously a fan of elite theory. I think there is a wisdom to keeping your powder dry until striking with the decisive blow. But at some point, you can be like, well, the barbarians are outside and they are burning down my village and they are planning to rape my wife and my children. But it would be imprudent to fight them now. I'll wait till later. Like at some point, the moment comes whether you have the plan or not. So there is a level of analysis paralysis that allows you to simply engage in cowardice. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not trying to push anyone I don't want anyone to get radical. I think everything, like I said, now should be focused on encouraging the Trump administration to take lawful action to prevent any other type of action being necessary. That is where my energy is focused now. If you think that's a waste of time, that's fine. Just don't stand in my way.
I mean, it's like that section from Proverbs 20 something, right? There is a lion in the street. Like, yes, there's always some reason not to do something, but
Right.
ultimately, like, you have to make a move. You have to play, and even if you have a very poor set of cards, well, a decision must be made. And again, I think that AA is a friend of mine, a huge influence on my thinking. But this is an area in which I think that perhaps the three of us disagree. I'll leave it at that.
Joe McDermott says, I'm confused why Antifa outside of ICE is not in Gitmo. What was the effect of labeling them a terrorist organization? Well, unfortunately, labeling them a terrorist organization domestically has no real legal weight. There is no specific power that is granted to you by designating a domestic terror group. Now, a foreign terror group is different. There is actually legal language. Powers are triggered by declaring Antifa a foreign terror group, which I think there is grounds to do because they were not started in the United States. Antifa is fundamentally started in Europe. It is not American in its founding. I think there's a great case to do this, and the Trump administration should. But labeling them domestic terrorists really only tells the executive branch to take them seriously. That's it. It doesn't have any additional legal language, unfortunately.
Well, also, and again, you still need to do something once
Right.
you've declared them a terrorist. It's not like, the joke from the
Michael
Office of
Scott,
just running out.
yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. I declare you're a terrorist. It's like, well, okay, there's a step 2 to that magic
Right.
equation, right?
You can jail a terrorist. If they can say you can punch a Nazi, you can jail a terrorist. That's the easy answer to that one. Or I said Nuka-Cola because I'm a huge Fallout fan. Cherry Coke Nixon says Andrew Kovolt posted on X, hey, fascist catch flyer from John Brown Club at Georgetown, DOJ, FBI sleep at the wheel. Yes, that's the flyer that Jay Burden sent me. And yes, the fact that is appearing on college campuses, they are openly recruiting for more terrorism. They are celebrating violence. They are saying openly that they cheer the death of Charlie Kirk. They plan for more. The fact that this is being allowed, I remember, I'm not that old. I remember a whole month ago when the Trump administration brought the entire hammer, the entire weight of the law onto organizations like universities because they were anti-Semitic. I remember this. I was there for this. Jay, you remember this, right? I'm not crazy. I'm not delusional. I remember taking
I was alive back then, several months ago.
Right. So I remember when the government had the authority, the ability, the political will to immediately punish these organizations for not being huge fans of Israel. So I think I know I'm crazy here. Maybe I'm out on my skis. Right. I don't want a Tucker Carlson moment where everyone thinks I'm an anti-Semite here. But if the government can punish schools for being anti-Semitic, then it can probably punish universities for allowing the recruitment openly of terrorists on their campus. There was just another conservative. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I hold the very radical position that our government should consider its own agents to be as worthy of their protection as they do the citizens of another country. And it seems to be a relatively reasonable ask. But sorry, I interrupted, Auron.
No, it's okay. It's just it's driving me nuts. I'm really tired of well, what if we take this action? We could take it on anti-Semitism. We could take it for Israel. You tell me you can't protect Americans on college campuses. You can't protect conservatives on college campuses, but you can protect pro-Israel demonstrators? Why? What is the magic? Explain it to me like I don't know. I know, but tell me. Pretend I don't. Pretend I don't know. And just explain it to me slowly. Why can't we do this? The universities are obviously facilitating people. We just had another conservative influencer who tried to set up a table talk like Charlie Kirk did. And by the way, guys, I don't like clout chasing all this stuff. So just think about your souls when you're doing this. Anyway, the point being, he set this up 10 minutes in. The entire college crowd was threatening him, pulling him out. The police couldn't guarantee his safety. college campuses are basically now like hot landing zones in Vietnam. Like conservative pundits are basically like lieutenants dropped into a hot LZ in Vietnam. That's now how long they can last in any given college setting. That's open terrorism on campus. If you can shut down anti-Semitic protests, you can shut down violent attacks on conservatives. I know you can do it, so just do it. Don't give me the excuses and do it. Life of Brian says, Auron's early hope that Trump would act reminds me of Charlie Kirk's Epstein remarks about trusting his friends in government. Delusional. Look, man, the other option is, well, we all know what the other option is. So if you would like to go ahead and advocate for all on, full scale vigilante violence, I'll let you take that into your, you can do that if that's what you feel like doing. I advise against it, but that is not my first reaction. My first reaction is encourage the government, who ostensibly is in power and is ostensibly serving our interests, to take legitimate action. It's not like I went in with my eyes closed. I understood that these guys often fail at this. That's why I encouraged it from the very beginning. In fact, many people attack me for not having enough faith in the Trump administration. It's only been a few days, Auron. Why are you speaking on this now? Give them a few days to figure it out. From day one, I jumped on them. No, this has to happen. It has to happen now. If it doesn't happen, terrible stuff will follow. So I hear you. Like, yeah, ultimately, this has been very disappointing. But the other option was to advocate for full-on vigilante violence, and that was not what I was going to do. So if you think that was just too weak for you, please move on. Find someone else who's going to scream your Fed posts out for you. I'm going to advise the administration to act within the law to bring justice to these people. Because if we don't, then the next step is rather horrific. He also says, Trump does nothing for the same reason I don't keep up with the lit on reproductive patterns of ants. He is 100% donor-driven. He doesn't care. Again, best of luck. Thimpler says, imagine if Lincoln had spent 4 years just saying this needs to stop. Well, don't get me started on Lincoln. Yeah. Don't go spinning utopias to me. Let's see here. Philosophical Thirstworm says, Bondi is a childless old woman forced by GOP senators because they know she's useless. It's the whole point. Thune's singular mission is containment. Again, I have to say that Bondi's action has been entirely disappointing. There are probably other weak figures that I guess could have been male or something, but ultimately she's the one they picked, and obviously she has not been up for the job. If you had a problem with Gates, there had to be someone else competent, and it seems like we put in someone who wasn't. Is it entirely so she could be incompetent or unable to get the job done? I don't know, but it surely is where we're at now. Thirstworm says, compare how Cash and Bondi react to two college kids arguing about Israel. Maybe we'll get some action if they engage in Free Palestine next time. Yep, again, like I said, Bondi's first reaction when she heard about what happened with Charlie Kirk was to talk about anti-Semitism on campus. We all see it, guys. Like, it's not, nobody's blind here. Okay, everyone's on the same page. So let's just make sure that it's understood. We have the power to do this. We've seen the administration do it, so they need to do it. Grouper Weirdo says he's not sorry, he's afraid. I sadly don't even think Kimmel's afraid at this point. That's the really sad truth, is I don't think he's even afraid at this point. He knew he had to cry a little bit to get back on television, so he did. He knew he wasn't going to apologize. That's why he was taken off in the first place. That's the rumor, is that he was supposed to apologize and he refused. And look, there are still two large affiliate groups, Sinclair and Nexstar, who are still refusing to show his stuff, right? So about 70 of the 250 affiliates for ABC refuses to air the Jimmy Kimmel Show, which is actually quite bad for them. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a huge hit because they probably already took a lot of flack from advertisers who didn't want to be involved. On top of that, advertisers who still are involved are getting, like, a third of the stations are not getting those advertisements in that time slot. So it is actually quite a blow. The real question is, will Sinclair and Nexstar continue, or will they just say, oh, well, I guess he cried on camera, so it's okay? I hope they continue to block this. Unfortunately, I don't know if they will. But at least at this moment, there is some level of penalty, but it's certainly not that I think ultimately he's sorry at all.
Well, especially when we consider how much money Kimmel's operation has been losing anyway. Like, it's been run at a loss for years at this point. So, look, like, if you're losing money, that's not good. But to increase the rate at which you're losing money by about a third, obviously it's not the win that having him gone would be, but at least they're paying through the nose for the privilege of keeping him around.
Yeah, that's right. At this point, ABC is, and this should really be noted, Disney, ABC, they are paying a Jimmy Kimmel tax because they support his ability to cover for terrorists more than money. So again, the completely purely capitalist theory of incentives for corporation proves entirely incorrect. They will choose ideology over money on a regular basis, and they are doing it again. But at least, as you say, there is a real penalty there. They are being forced to pay a tax for keeping him on. Jacob Zindel says, why are there still gender studies departments at U.S. universities? Again, I agree 100%. We know this is an ideology that gets people killed. We know it's an ideology that it encourages child mutilation. We know that it ends up pushing this over and over again. And so I think, all of this needs to be removed from universities. We know that the administration can do it, so let's do it. Simon Raban says, does the Bible interpret itself? If so, how? I'm assuming this is some kind of sola scriptura attempt here. So I'm not really gonna do theology, I guess, at this one. I'm not a pastor. I'll let someone handle that. Wild Speaker says, I sympathize with the administration that they can't be as transparent as they'd like. You can't show your hand before the turn. And I hear you. That ultimately does make sense. But we need to see action at some point. We can't just hear, oh, well, we're always planning. As we've pointed out, as Burden has pointed out, as many of the commenters have pointed out, we've seen that the administration is perfectly capable of doing things like enforcing their will on college campuses. So I get maybe you can't do an entire RICO case in 2 weeks. Fine. You can put pressure on college campuses. I know you can. I've seen you do it, and I've seen you do it in the same amount of time. So let's see that. I'm not asking for every action right away. I'm not asking for a roadmap to every single FBI raid. I understand why that won't work, but I can see some action. And right now I'm seeing none. And Michael Gray says, we can't let Charlie Kirk slip into our rear view mirrors. The left is furious that we punched back and they won't forget it. Don't wilt. Yeah, again, their whole hope is that this media cycle just kind of moves on, right? They can get back to what they were doing. But interestingly enough, they're rabid feeding into the cycle rather than just laying low like they kind of did with the Trump assassination. I think means that this won't just move on. I think that this one will actually stay with us for quite a while. I don't think the assassination of Charlie Kirk is going to fade into memory immediately in the news cycle, or at least it won't if we have anything to say about it. So that's what we're going to do. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for coming by. As always, if it's your first time on this channel, you need to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast or on YouTube click the bell notification so you know when we go live. And if we get these broadcasts as podcasts, you need to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast network. When you do leave a rating or review, it helps with the algorithm magic. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.